Clap it up, 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 clap it up. I'm back. You already know what it is, Mr. Mob. I ain't about to hold y'all too long. We gotta go ahead and jump straight into this video. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. You already know. Tell a friend to tell their mom and their dad and your cousin, your people, the strangers, everybody about me. Just walk up to them and say, hey, you heard of Monster Reactions? Do that. Hey, today, I'm back with another video about Mr. Nightmare, because he be having all the good stuff. I'm so glad I came across this dude. Hey, today we got 8 creepy, unexplainable phone calls, and I want to know what was said. And I know y'all want to see me react to what was said. And we about to both react to what was said, you feel me? So, may all the ladies that are watching me say, hey, monster. Yeah. Ain't call me Big Monster if you really on that. But yeah, we about to go ahead and jump straight into this video. Yeah! There you go. Hey, that's loud. You already know I got to stay on deck with the orange juice. Put the spray in the bottle.
In 2015, student Michael Andrews of the University of Southern California left his dorm room with his roommate Steve to go to a frat party off campus. On the way to the party, Steve had realized he left his phone in the dorm room, but already in the Uber to the party, they didn't bother going back to the dorm. At some point during the party, while the two friends had separated to mingle with other friends and acquaintances, Michael's phone began to ring. It was from Steve's number. He picked up and heard Steve's voice on the other end, covered by a mask of static. Even in the loud party, he could distinguish the voice of his roommate saying, "Come back to the room." Then the call ended. With that, Michael left the party and Ubered back to the campus dorms, trying to call Steve back and text him, but he wasn't getting any responses. When Michael got back to the dorm room, he didn't find Steve inside. Strangely though, he did find Steve's phone sitting on his bed. Upon checking the notifications on the screen, Michael saw the notifications of all his texts and calls on the screen. It wasn't until an hour later that Steve returned to the room looking for Michael after hearing that he left. And this was when he told Michael that he never called him and that he never had his phone. What made this even stranger was that Steve's phone had no record of making a call to Michael, yet Michael's phone had a record of receiving a call and having a 15-second conversation. The phone company wasn't able to trace a call from Steve inside, and nobody was found hiding in their dorm room or anything like that.
Get out of here! Hey, hold on, man. I can't be friends with Steve no more. I'm changing my number and my name. I'm leaving the school. Cause who playing with me like that? Hey, ain't no way. The cell phone company? So was that like them people trying to play with Buddy? Like, hey, we can get anybody's phone. If you know, you know. Hey. But that's crazy. Let's see what she's talking about. She look pretty. I hope she okay.
1970, 25-year-old Donna Lass worked as a nurse at the First Aid. 25-year-old Donna. In 1970, 25-year-old Donna Lass worked as a nurse at the First Aid station of a casino in South Lake Tahoe,
Respectfully,
California.
she gone. Unless she's like 90-something now.
Donna's boss and landlord both received calls from an unidentified
she might be
man who
90-something.
claimed she was dealing with an illness in the family
Maybe
and would be out of town for a while. Donna's boss became suspicious, so he contacted her mother, who confirmed that story was a lie. Donna's car was found parked outside her apartment, but there was no trace of her anywhere. The last sign of her was an entry she'd made in her logbook near the end of her final shift. The entry looked unfinished, as if someone had possibly interrupted her. No one could figure out Donna's whereabouts or the identity of the caller until the San Francisco Chronicle received a mysterious postcard 6 months later. The postcard was the latest in a long line of cryptic messages from the Zodiac Killer. The killer made no direct reference to Donna, but hinted that he had murdered and buried his 12th victim in Lake Tahoe. It didn't take a detective to make the connection between this note and Donna's disappearance. The postcard provided a lot of possible clues regarding Donna's whereabouts.
I don't think they ever found this dude.
Turned up nothing. Something complicates a connection between the Zodiac Killer and Donna, though.
This is
the fact
totally
that the Zodiac Killer was not known for hiding bodies. So if he wasn't responsible, the whereabouts of Donna's body and who tried to hide her disappearance remain a mystery.
That's creepy. Nah, that's creepy for real.
In 2008, 19-year-old college student Brendan Swanson was driving home after a night out when he crashed into a ditch on a gravel road in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota. Knowing how dangerous of a predicament he found himself in, and probably aware he was in a cliche horror movie setup, he called his parents and asked for a ride. However, his parents had trouble finding him, and when arriving to the location he provided, they couldn't find his car. So they got back on the phone for over 45 minutes trying to find him as he described his location. Swanson claimed he could see lights from a nearby town and was heading in that direction, but things took a turn for the worse when he suddenly yelled, "Oh shit." Before his father could even scold his son for using that language on the phone with him, the call cut off, and that's the last anyone ever heard from Brendan.
Yo, that's
Even
crazy.
with hundreds of volunteers and 30 dogs searching, only his car was found. So what happened to him? What did he see that made him go, "Oh shit," before abruptly hanging up?
Why he had to repeat it like that? And why he had to repeat it like that?
Back, a Reddit user named Stacy Kolupski shared the experience of her brother, who would get a call on his cell phone around 2 to 3 a.m. every night.
Boy, Reddit guy, everything.
He would answer it every time to hear this hellish-sounding noise that he described as a static mixed with screams. He changed his cell phone number after a month of this, and it stopped. Then, after a week or so, it began again, with the exact same noise at the exact same time.
Well, that's crazy.
Finally, one day he decided to backdial the call, and an old man picked up who had no idea what he was talking about. If he didn't answer, it would call a few more times, but no messages were ever left. He decided to say screw it, and ended his contract with his phone company, switched to a new one, and then got another new number.
Right.
And exactly what he feared had happened. The screaming static calls continued after a short delay.
Boy, that's crazy.
By this time, he was terrified every night. Unsure why this was happening, he backdialed the number again and got a different person, who also had no idea what he was talking about. Around this time, Stacy's brother lost his job and his phone, which was now disconnected, meaning the calls of course stopped. One day, Stacy's mom asked her to listen to a weird message she got on her home phone. It was the static screaming. They showed her brother, and he of course freaked out. He backdialed the number again, and it said the number was disconnected this time. They never heard from it again after that.
Boy, no. Boy, no.
In the 1970s, Bashir Kaushaki opened a successful restaurant in Washington, D.C. And for
real quick, let's just say he didn't switch cell phone companies, but he just changed his number. Excuse me. Then that could have been somebody he know playing with, bro. Excuse me. Or that could have been somebody that worked at the cell phone company that he did something to, or they felt played by something and was just wanting to bother him. You feel me? Make him feel away. But this nigga switched cell phone companies. And the same thing. And when you backdial, them folks say, I don't know what you're talking about. 2 different people? Call Jesus.
Over a decade, he enjoyed nothing but success. But in 1983, he became the target of a non-stop stream of threatening phone calls that came several times a day, every day. Usually harassment similar to this will eventually stop on its own as the harassers get bored and move on to something else. But Kaushaki was harassed by these phone calls for nearly a decade. The caller would eventually be nicknamed L'Enfant, which is French for the child. The nickname was presumed to reference the caller's eventual imitation of a little girl. Anyone associated with Kaushaki in any way was a target, from his pregnant spouse to his restaurant employees. The harassment was one day elevated from simply phone calls to physical harassment when the Star of David was scratched all over Kaushaki's Mercedes. When he traveled to Philadelphia to visit his sister, things got so bad he suffered a mental breakdown and committed himself to a psychiatric ward. But even still, the calls continued to his restaurant. The FBI eventually placed a trace on the phone to confirm whether L'Enfant was a delusion or not, and what they found out put how bad this was into perspective. The calls were coming from different payphones at such a high frequency that it would have been impossible for only one person to have been making these calls. The L'Enfant callers was a plot orchestrated by multiple people for the express purpose of harassing Kaushaki to insanity, but it was never figured out what the motive was.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
All the way back in 1931, there was a man named William Wallace
who worked as a London insurance agent
and had an obsession for playing chess in his free time. One night, Wallace showed up for a chess club meeting and found a telephone message waiting for him.
Right.
The sender wanted to meet at 7:30 the following
night
so he could purchase an
Thank
insurance
God.
policy.
Hey, God. Thank you for being on my side.
Wallace traveled across town and discovered that the address provided didn't exist.
For real.
So he headed back home, most likely convinced that he was the victim of some dumb prank. But when he got home, he found his wife Julia's body had been beaten to death in the living room. The mysterious caller was the obvious suspect. But after an investigation, police determined that the caller was actually William Wallace himself. Authorities argued that Wallace had left the message to fabricate an alibi.
What?
He killed his wife, hopped in a streetcar, drove around for an hour, then went home to supposedly discover his wife's body. This argument was invalid, as it was completely impossible for Wallace to have committed the murder, given he wouldn't have been able to return quick enough.
Right.
The jury found Wallace guilty of the murder anyway, but luckily the Court of Criminal Appeal immediately overturned the conviction. The killer was never identified, but the prime suspect was a former employee of Wallace's insurance firm, who allegedly asked his wife to provide him a fake alibi and was seen wearing bloody gloves and hosing down his car on the night of the murder. Jason Alexander would frequently get...
I don't deal with nobody when it comes to insurance policies. Hey, when it comes to that insurance money, folks they tweak out. I'm trying to tell you. None of that. I don't think, bro, y'all think he did it, though, to his wife? Y'all think he was in on it? Because I ain't that type of nigga, because, you know, me, I ain't that, you feel me? I ain't that type person to, like, because to me, that's like dry snitching. You feel me? But I'm just saying, though, this YouTube video, you feel me? So, we're going to keep it YouTube, like, y'all think he did it, though? Or y'all think he was in on it? Or do y'all think he innocent? Because the person that dude just described, that they just said, was watching down his car, was seeing, and he didn't want to give him an alibi, he got motive. But was he there? Was it a coincidence? What if he just knocked somebody else off at the same time she got knocked off, and he trying to do something for something totally different? You see what I'm saying? I don't know, that's weird though. Because they said Burr was the one to call. That's crazy. Super crazy.
Calls to his house for a woman named Tanya. It
That's
didn't seem like a big deal, since Tanya had the same last name as Jason's family, and it was a common name from where they were from.
Right.
When Jason and his family moved across the city, and phone books gradually stopped being the go-to way of finding somebody's number, the calls for Tanya gradually stopped.
I'm glad they changed that.
After a while, the Alexander family forgot about the Tanya woman. It was about 4 years later that she popped up in their lives again. Jason was driving home from work one afternoon.
I don't know nothing about that
a pretty grisly car wreck at the turn to his house.
I feel like I've been in the neighborhood before.
Collided, and one had wrapped itself around the signage pole that had the house numbers and directions on it, one of which was his house number. Several days later, he got a call from the police. They asked if Tanya was at his residence. Her car was found wrapped around a pole down the street from Jason's house, and she was nowhere to be found at the accident site. He had never heard anything about her ever again.
Nah, that's weird.
In 1965, the young woman you're looking at, named Judith Hyams, disappeared from her hometown of Coral Gables, Florida.
Put that on me,
the worst when her abandoned car was found in Atlanta with blood in the backseat.
What?
Judith was pregnant and recently went through a divorce. She allegedly made arrangements to get an illegal abortion from a Hungarian doctor named George Hajdu. He was charged with conspiring to perform the abortion, but skipped bail and fled the country.
Smart.
After this, the case was forgotten for a quarter-century, until it was rejuvenated by a series of bizarre phone calls. In 1990, the Coral Gables police captain Chuck Smith received a message from an Omaha, Nebraska radio host claiming he had information about Judith's disappearance. Smith called the host back, but the host was completely confused. The host said he never made the call, and he knew nothing at all about Judith. Smith soon received another anonymous call claiming Judith was alive in Omaha. Smith knew nothing about the case, but he had recently traveled to Omaha to deliver a lecture at a police academy, and he started to wonder if this was a prank. Smith got a third anonymous call from someone who claimed to be an FBI informant who had recently spent time with Dr. Hajdu in Hungary. They even provided an old phone number for Hajdu that checked out. Smith was confused, and with such a baffling case, he took the story to the TV show Unsolved Mysteries. After the Judith Hyams episode was broadcast, Smith got an anonymous letter confirming what many people suspected all along. Judith died during an illegal abortion and wound up in a watery grave. While that's the logical solution, it doesn't account for all the strange calls. The callers and writer have not been identified, the doctor has not been found, and Judith's body was never recovered.
Weird. Oh, that's crazy. Oh, boy, I was about to say, boy, I thought I had messed up on my video. Oh, my goodness, I thought I wasn't recording. I was about to be so below. I ain't gonna hold you. I was about to be so below. Y'all weren't about to get a video from me for a good little minute. You feel me? Nah, that's weird, though. I ain't expecting it to be like that. Hey, man, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Hey, that's crazy. Hey, let me know in the comments what y'all think about whichever one y'all want to talk about. And I'm going to respond. Because let's talk about it. You feel me? But make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at fanboy.retro. I'd never, ever have shouted out my Instagram. But, yeah. Follow me on Instagram, fanboy.retro4. You already know. And we out. Oh, you thought I forgot. Remember, you can go anywhere. You can do anything. As long as you take yourself with you. Now, once in a while, we out. Peace.